Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I am Sulind. I think today is gonna be the last day of this course, and the topic that I'm going to talk is about the conflict resolution in land use planning and management. And I think I shared. Jen, do you see this slide already? Not yet.
Uh, we have seen the slide, but it's not full screen as
Oh,
a
okay, okay.
presentation.
Okay, just a moment, please. Just a moment. Okay, do you see it now? It's
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, today the topic is about the land use conflict resolution. So I think as a gonna be the last course and the last session for student, the way I'm going to do it, not going to like talk in detail about this topic, but I rather than introduce a student to the topic about to land use conflict resolution. Yeah, that is the way I would do. So like is I may spend not a longer time, just very short time on this topic. So yeah, when we talked about the land use conflict resolution, from academic point of view, from scholar view, it's not only about the dispute settlement or stop the conflict, but we view the conflict resolution as the process that we like to understand the process structured and the powered relations or powered dynamics embedded in the conflict or the competing claims of land resources, and that is a very important view. So yeah, as a scholar or as the academia, we are not going to uh, stop or resolve the conflict directly, but uh, we like to understand, yeah, the actors, the power directions, and the process that we like to uh, intervene or understand the conflict. And so in this point of view, land use conflict resolution seek not just to alleviate immediate discord, but also to understand the root cause of land use contention. And yeah, we like to develop the long-term systematic solutions. It's not just only the immediate conflict management. So in this presentation, you will learn about the nature of the conflict, what is the land use conflict, and why does it occur. That is the very first topic you will learn from our presentation. And the second topic is about the different options or approaches to conflict resolution. You will learn how to dealing with the conflict in your context or in the land use management and planning. And the last part of my presentation will be the case study I show you, one case study from the northern of Thailand, where the project sought to resolve or try to resolve the conflict between stakeholders who've been involving in the land use management and resource utilization from Thailand. So yeah, first of all, yeah, it's about we need to know about the nature of the conflict. So the conflict in land use planning or management, it arises when where there are different interests or the interests of two or more parties or stakeholders, and they clash in uh, uh, just a moment. Yeah. And they seek to, most of the party involved, they seek to assert their interest, but at the same time, the other stakeholder will be losing that benefit. So that is the conflict happened to occur. And the conflict has been also described as a social phenomenon that can result from the gradual change that create the divergent interests and needs. So when the social change, different actors, different stakeholders change their interests, that also caused the conflict in the resource utilization. A conflict can involve two parties or several parties. It kinds of the multi-party conflicts and can arise in numerous contexts, and also at different levels and also different issues in land, in on property, in other water or other conflict as well. So like in agriculture, is we can find those in different contexts, different levels, and national, local, or subnational. And also like it's a different issues. Sometimes concerning about economics, sometimes it concerning about environment, sometimes concerning about the political conflicts. And of course, conflicts are multidimensional and involve complex interaction between many parties, as I mentioned. It more than two parties who have different interests in the same unit of resource or the same set of resource, but they have different interests, different view, different expectations, and that cause the conflict. So from this point of view, from the nature of the conflict is part of a kind of the resource management. We cannot, sometimes it happen and we cannot avoid, but we can dealing with the conflict. So in the context of land use, because land is considered as the most important resources, is the subject of the interest of is the varied user. They are like local user, they are government, they are local government unit, they are NGOs, and they are also asset developers. Those are like them are interested in land. So like land becoming very, very important, and sometimes scarcity of the resources. So it's becoming the subject of the conflict. And the needs and requirements of the user are different, as ecosystem for some require land for property development, some require land for the growing crops, and some required for like for housing. Yeah, and also like it's most of requirement and the needs are different. But sometimes they are in the same land, a piece of land, so that caused the conflict. And also a user who been involving in land resources have different goals, priorities, and interests that are often conflicting. Some, as I mentioned, focusing on the economic development, some for ecosystem conservation, and some for like it's a cultural practice or cultural valued. So like it's those goals and priorities are not in the same line. So like becoming the conflict among the land user. And also sometimes the inappropriate and also in terms of the guideline for management by different user is sometimes possibility for producing numerous conflicts, and it's often the cause of varied form of land degradation because they have different expectations, so they have different means and way of managing the land. So like those kinds of things can produce numerous conflicts. Yeah. So like in terms of the land management and planning in order to ensure sustainable development and regional use of these important resources, as I mentioned, conflict management or resolution is very important and is imposed as an integral part of land planning and land use and management and also protection. So we can say that land use conflict can arise at all stages of the planning, from at beginning to the end of the land use planning and management throughout the development process. So the conflict from different actors, different stakeholders who have different expectations, different interests, different priorities cause the conflict. And also, like when we talked about the land use conflict and resolution, we need to understand the causes and the root cause, underlying cause, and sometimes the general causes of the land use conflict. And yeah, we can largely we can identify the cause of land use conflict into six categories, six type of the cause of land use conflict. The first one is about the population growth and urbanization, because the growth of population required more land for like housing, and the urbanization required more land for housing the area, so that can cause the conflict. And the second cause of the land use conflict is the agricultural expansion that can encroach the forest land, the natural land, that also cause conflict between the local user and the official who like to protect the forest land. And of course, the third one of the cause of the conflict is because of the competing land use. That is a dispute arises when land is wanted at the same time for incompatible purpose, such as some require the resources or the land for mining, and sometimes it contrasts with a group of people who demand the land for tourism activity. That is for example. Or sometimes require the land for industrial development, but some group of people like want that land to be the housing or residential, the area or uses. So like those kinds of competing land uses can cause the conflict between users and the actors. And also another cause of the conflict is the weak governance and policy. A poorly defined land tenure, the overlapping land lines, corruption, and inadequate zoning laws can create the legal uncertainty. So like when we are in the context where a governance system is quite very weak, so the land tenure is quite overlapping, and the claiming over the land is competing among the user that cause the conflict. They cannot implement or enforce the rules or the law effectively. So the weak governance and policy really a cause of the conflict. Also, the environmental degradation and climate change also cause the conflict because resources due to a kind of the degraded resources due to pollution or climate change, increased competition as people scramble for the productive land when it becoming very degraded. So people like to move to another piece of land. So they like to be in or like to have a productive land. That is a very, very high competition. And the last factor or the last contributed to the land conflict is about the socio-economic factors and also the economic inequality and large-scale land acquisition, land grabbing by foreign investor or government can sometimes marginalize local communities. Those types of things can cause the conflict. So like, this is the main cause of conflict. I explain it quite very general. So like in each context, the cause of land use conflict will be different. It depends on the context and depend on the policy, depends on the actors who've been involving in land use planning and management. So coming to the conflict resolution, as I mentioned earlier, that is when we talked about conflict resolution from academic point of view, is a process by which two or more conflicting parties or stakeholders improve their situation by cooperation or by collaborative action, allowing the parties to expand the power to prevent it from shrinking, giving each party a larger slide that is a kind of a meaning is the keyword is the process. We don't stop. It's just like the immediate action to stop the violence, but it's the process. Also, conflict resolution refers to the informal or formal processes that two or more parties use to address disagreement among them and in order to reach a peaceful, workable solution. They like to work together. So people who are at the conflicting position, they come together, using both informal, sometimes a formal. Informal, they can have a talk, and for formal, they can set up a kind of a committee to solve the conflict. For example, in the working situation or in the workplace, conflict resolution aim not only to end dispute, but also to preserve or to maintain relationships, maintain productivity, and reduce the emotional and financial cost of ongoing conflict. Of course, the conflict can cause the kinds of the bad atmosphere, destroy relationships. So the conflict resolution, like to strengthen or enhance the relationship, and maintain the productivity, and reduce the cost by the conflict. And conflict resolutions aim to bring about the benefit for the party. Yeah, it doesn't not simply mean to stop or control the conflict. It could include a kind of like it's about the justice process. Yeah, like to end the conflict. And of course, this resolution process will create the possibility of win-win situation in which both parties gain overall to collaborative effort and leave both parties better off with the outcome. Yeah, both parties who been in conflicting situation, they are in a conflicting situation, will get both win-win. They gain what they like to get, and yeah, both of they can find like a kind of the common agreement between them, and they can have the a better situation for both of them. Yeah. However, when we talk a bit about the conflict resolution, it's not about the a kind of the golden the answer. Yeah, sometimes it may not always be the best option for all the party. In some situation, a party may actually capture the largest share of the benefit, yeah, to the unilateral action. Some may lose their or gain lesser or the benefit shared when they go to the process of the conflict resolution. Yeah, it could happen in that way as well. Yeah, another point that I like to share with you. Yeah, when we like to go to the conflict management and resolution, we need to understand at least 4 dimensions of the conflict. Yeah, that is the first dimension is about actors. Second, we need to understand who are in the conflicts. Yeah, that is the actor or stakeholders. Yeah, the second dimension or aspect that we need to understand is a resource in dispute or resource in conflict. What kinds of resources that they are disagree with. For example, it's about land, about water, it's about like it's pollution, or it's about economic sharing. Yeah, what kinds of resources in this field we need to know, and we have to identify it in order to working on the conflict or to resolve the conflict. And the third dimension is the stake in each actor has in the resources. What kind of stake of each individual stakeholder or actor is a kind of the income, a kind of the social aspect or cultural aspect, or a kind of the political aspect. What kind of stake they are in these kinds of resources. And the last one, we need to set up the time frame, time dimension for the conflict state that the conflict has reached. We need to assess, we need to know what a state that we are now, yeah, in order to work with the conflict resolution. Yeah, these are four dimensions that we need to understand in order to resolve or work with the conflict. So in the next slide, yeah, I give some explanation of each individual dimension or factor that we need to understand. You can see it. Actors is very important idea. Yeah, when we are going to work with the conflict in land use planning, we need to get to know the actors or the stakeholders, so you can use the tools or the approaches about the stakeholder analysis in order to get to know the actors who've been in conflicting things, situations. Yeah. Also, not only about the individual actors or stakeholder, we need to understand about the interaction between the actor as well, because the interaction is quite very important. Yeah, and interaction among or between actors will be influenced by the level at which the conflict occurs at local, subnational, or national level, or international level. That is a level where the conflict happened. Also, the relative or level of status of the conflicting parties, what kinds of relation they are. They are friends, they are like this boss and and workers, or they are like this government or local communities. Yeah, those kinds of the relation among conflicting parties also define the interaction among the parties in conflict. And the last point about interaction, we need to understand about the power relation among those parties who been in the conflicting situation. And the second dimension, as I mentioned already, it's about resource at stake. We need to understand what kinds of resources that they are interest, they are in conflict. And sometimes like it's in agriculture, forestry, on fishery sector, and sometimes they are like industry or tourism. Yeah, we need to identify the resources at stake. Yeah, resource in aspect of which the conflict arises may have certain characteristic. Yeah, because if you are in agriculture, they have different or certain characteristic, but sometimes different from the characteristic in forestry or in industrial. So like these kinds of stake is very important. And the stake, as I mentioned, is the value or use or interest that an actor has in the resource they are in conflict. It can be economic, political, environmental, or religions, or socio-economic, and we vary depending on the resources and the actors. Yet the stake can be perceived as and having both subjective and objective elements. Yeah, it can be seen as a representing actors' subjective evaluation of that relationship with the resource. And yeah, and actor stake may also be assessed on the basis of objective criteria, such as the percentage of income derived from the resource. And if they have like the high income, that is quite very, very high stake for them. Yeah, that is the meaning of assessment of the stake based on the objective criteria. And the stake may be affected by external factors, such as legal recognition of an actor's interest in a resource. And formal legal recognition can have dramatic effect on the actors bargaining power in relation to the other actors. And the last point, last dimension of the conflict resolution is the time dimension. It is very important to establish what state the conflict has had reached. A certain period of time may need to before the issues surrounding conflict crystallize to the point where they can be constructively addressed. Yeah, pressure to resolve conflict is also likely to increase over time, which may lead to a less than satisfactory conclusion being reached. So the early intervention in most conflict is therefore advisable to facilitate that satisfactory resolution and to minimize undesirable consequences. So the time dimension is quite very important. We need to, or we have to identify where we are now in the conflict situation. And yeah, for the approaches to the conflict resolution, actually there are different way people dealing with the conflict, right? But this is just one approach that we can use or we can employ into the conflict resolution. And this diagram you can see from below, from the ground, is a confrontation and litigation that is quite very, how can we say, the isolation approach. Yeah, the party in power can use their own power to confront with the other parties in order to protect their own interests. That is quite very isolation. But upper in the middle that can employ as an option as a, how can we say, we can call it as a alternative conflict resolution. Yeah, it could be a negotiated rule making, set up the rule for negotiation, arbitration, mediation, meaning that we have a third party who work with the conflicting parties, and this middle guide will help to work in the process to help the conflicting party get or reach the agreement among them. And also we can use or employ the facilitation and consideration. That is another kind of the alternative dispute resolution. So when we employ these kinds of the approaches, that meaning that the neutral party bring all the parties together in the process of negotiation, talking, discussing among those of a conflicting party. So we need a neutral party in order to work with the actors who are in the conflict. And on the top is a negotiation. That is the party representing their own interests. They have their own power, so like they can negotiate with the conflicting party. So when we look at from the ground is isolation. So like in the top is cooperation or collaboration, more a kind of the building a consensus more collaboratively. So more discard, agreed, and implement those kinds of the approach from isolation to the cooperation. So there are different, it depends on resources, depends on the skill, depends on the knowledge, experiences of the conflicting actors. So like we can employ different kinds of the approach and option to the conflict resolution. Yeah, and then this slide gives you a kind of the explanation, so like you can study more and you can like select or choose appropriate options and tools to help to work on the conflict in each situation. So like our role is to choose the right or the appropriate tools for the conflict management or resolution. And I just give you a kind of like the idea how the conflict result, or how the conflict management looks like. Yeah, I use the case of the JOMPA, or joint management of protected areas, is the case in the north of Thailand. So the site where they employ the approach to resolve the conflict happened in Chiang Mai. It's a Mae is a small watershed of Mekang sub watershed. This site you can see in the map is showing the like national park or forest area in Chiang Mai province, and the project site is in the middle where the red color in the circle of the red color, that is a sub watershed. It is located in Op Luang National Park under the National Park Wildlife and Plant Resources Department. So in this park, of course, is management under the National Park Department, but in the park also there are people living inside the park boundary. They are Hmong ethnic community. So this group of people, they need land for cropping or growing crops. In the past, they practiced the opium plantation, but after the government promoted some projects, so like they changed to plant the cash crop, like the cash crop, many cash crops are species planted in the area. So like in order to gain income at the same level when they grow opium, so like Hmong community need more land to going the cash crop. So that is a cause the conflict between the park and the community. And also because they are living in the top of the mountain, is classified as a watershed class 1. Is the watershed area, and the people who living in the lowland also facing the problem of water insufficient more than many years in the area. So also it caused the conflict between the upland community, Hmong community, and also like the lowland people who is a non-ethnic community. So there are conflict between, so that the conflict parties in this case are the park officials and the Hmong community, and also the Hmong community who are classified as the upland community with the lowland communities about the water issues. So that, and in order to mobilize their power, people who living in the park, they came together as a network. They call themselves as a Highland Conservative Group of Jom Thom District. This group has expanded from one community to like other 10 villages and develop into a political movement in order to alter the national resource management policy, because when they're living in the park areas, there are very strict regulations and rules. So like sometimes they cannot use the water, they cannot use their own land because the regulation enforce them. So like they use the network as a platform, as a tool for negotiation with the park officials. And in the area, they employ different approaches and options to resolve the conflict. One of the process or the tool they use was the co-management or collaborative management. It was established under, they call them, these kinds of the approach is JOMPA or joint management of protected areas. And because in the traditional or conventional way of park management is quite very top-down approach. No allowing people to participate or to particularly in the like the decision-making process. So like it's when the conflict happened, the project started in the area, employed the approach they call JOMPA or co-management approach. Yeah, is what established. And the main objective of this project is to protect the area because it's a conservation area, right? It's a park area, so like the project like to protect the area, and also they like to promote the livelihood strategy as a sustainable development as well, because of people or Hmong ethnic community living in the area, but so like they like to combine both protection or conservation with the sustainable development or livelihood development strategy to cooperation of related organizations and people living in the area. So like they are working, there are very, very different various organizations working with the local community in the area. One technique or one approach that they used in order to solve the conflict about the land use conflict, they use they call PGIS or participatory GIS and mapping. So like they use a GIS technique in order to prepare the map, and also like they use the map from local participation, and also like use the map from the official. They are like combining both together and using the GIS participatory GIS as a tool for clarifying and for like is showing the land use in the area where different stakeholder or the conflicting parties like the park official, local communities, and lowland representative, they agree together about the land use, the present land use in the area. Yeah, so like the PGIS helps a lot in this process for showing the land use in the area. Also, they employ the land demarcation that encouraging all parties like local communities, Hmong ethnic communities, park officials, and also like representative from the lowland community to get involved in land demarcation. So like they call this process as a party land demarcation, and they're using equipment such as the GPS. Yeah, they empower local community and local stakeholder to use the GPS, and they demark the land together using the participatory process for land demarcation. And when they got the kinds of the map, they got the boundary that draw together, they work together among different stakeholders. So like they come up with a kind of the minute of understanding in order to like stop the land encroachment. They agree on the line or the boundary of the agricultural land and the conservation the boundary. So like they agree on those of the kinds of the boundary, the line of the land use, and then they come up with the MOU or minute of understanding between the stakeholder in the project site. And this MOU signed among the identified key stakeholder, for example, the Hmong and the community, the representative from the lowland network, and the park official, and also like the local government unit also involved in this MOU signing as well. So in this case, the success of the land demarcation was collaboratively conducted by 4 direct and indirect stakeholders. So you can see that there are different stakeholders, and they classify the stakeholder into 2 categories. First is a direct and indirect. And yeah, for example, local communities, government agencies, and the TAO or Tambon administration organization. These are kinds of the government or co-government unit who are uh, who was in the area as a kind of the local government. And also there are NGO or non-governmental organization being involved in this process as well. And also they are got supported from academic and operational support groups who support them in terms of the kinds of the concept on the idea in order to conduct the co-management in the area. So this is just showing you like briefly about how the conflict of land being resolved through the participatory process and through the land demarcation that was conducted collaboratively among different stakeholders, and then they can resolve the conflict on the ground at the site level, at the national park level. You can share Jen about the case study of this of Luang joint management or Jompa. You can read the paper. I sent it to Jane already. If you are interested in this paper, you can study more on the paper I already sent to Jane. Yeah, the last one I like to highlight that the conflict resolution is part of the land use planning and management, and also the conflict resolution are crucial, critical to the sustainable land use management and sustainable management, because the first issue that I like to highlight is promoting the better and more sustainable utilization of natural resources. Yeah, if the conflict arise from a competitive or like it's different interest, different kinds of different use of the resource by more than one party, the process of conflict resolution may lead to the kinds of the discovery of solution that can lead to the resource involved being utilized more sustainably and optimally. Yeah, this kinds of the process can lead to more sustainable utilization of natural resources. And the second point that I like to highlight is the conflict resolution can promote the equity or fairness. That is which is a relative concept and hard to define in general term, but it can be important reason for resolving conflict, and it's also considered to constitute an important element of sustainable development. Yeah, it implies a fairness to present and future generations in the way the environment resources are managed and passed on. Yeah, it's so equity not only our present generation, but it could pass on to the next generation as well. So the conflict resolution will get us to that level. And the another point that I like to highlight for the benefit of the conflict resolution and relevant to sustainable land use management is to avoid unwanted consequences. Yeah. Unwanted consequences may include violence and also loss of life, damage to physical property or the financial loss. So like it's if we those kinds of things can be avoided if we work on the conflict. Yeah, so the conflict resolution can bring us to the sustainable land use management. And the last one, it will be promoting social stability. Yeah, the promotion of social stability can result from resolution of conflict to the avoidance of undesirable consequences, and by promoting a sense of fairness among the parties to the conflict, where conflicts are resolved using collaborative technique involving the interest party in the research for solution. The outcome is usually more satisfactory or satisfied by the party involved or the conflicting party, and therefore more easily enforced and workable in practice. So like if the conflicting party, they are working together in the process where they provide with the tools and the process, so like they can get the result, satisfy their needs, so like that it can reduce the conflict or prevent the conflict. So that is, I think, very not too long. So as I said that I just introduce you to the topic, the conflict resolution. So like it's you can study more, and hopefully this just like give you some idea and like inspire you to study more on the land use conflict resolution, because it's very important issue and topic. So we cannot, as we realize that the conflict is part of our practice and land use management and planning. So if we learned about the conflict resolution and we see conflict not only produce or lead us to the negative consequences, but it can produce or it can lead us to more like progress and allow us to work more collaboratively. So conflict resolution in this sense is quite very important. Yeah. So Jen, I think that is just briefly presenting you and the classmate about the land use conflict. So if some of you have any question or the issue that you like to share, please very welcome and feel free to raise the question. And yeah, as I mentioned that I share with you some slides and also like some two papers, the article papers. You can, if you are interested in, you can study more. Jane, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ajahn Surin, for this today present. Yeah, and then as Dr. Surin already mentioned, if you have any question in further, you can contact me, and then I will try to communicate with Dr. Surin as much as I can. And I already upload the articles that Dr. Surin already mentioned in earlier in the Google Drive that we share the teaching material. And also so I would take this, if you don't have any question for Dr. Surin, I might take this opportunity to say thank you to Dr. Surin to give us a nice talk and yeah, spare our time. Okay, thank you, Ka Ajahn.
Thank you, and see you next time.
Yes,
And wish you like enjoy the last class and then
yeah, and then we have another section. Yeah.
get a good result from this participation. Bye bye for now.
Bye bye. And for the three of you, Valena, Erika, and Stephen, let's have a break for 10 minutes and then we will come back on in Thailand time at 2:15 p.m. at Thai time. Okay, and then after this, Professor Yuttapong will give you a recap and yeah, some kind of assignment or something like that. Okay. Let's have a break.
Everyone, good afternoon. Do you got my message? Do you hear me?
Yes, Ajahn.
Okay. Thank you. So, this is I feel happy that all of you join this class until the last day. Today is the last day of this course. So, for this time, I like to give you some. So for this, okay. We will start with the conclusion for this time. So the conclusion I divide into many topics. The first topic I will give you some concept overview. You all get the information about many aspects in land use system, like the effect of land use change on natural resources. And another topic focus to the to manage the land use. And also the last topic that I mentioned to you is about the land use planning concept. Maybe because it's difficult to contact to the professor, so the topic maybe not sequence. Anyway, I try to give a brief information what you gain from this course. The first that I mentioned, we discussed about the concept overview. The second, we discussed to the core principle on integrated land use management, land use system management and planning. The third topic focus to the key component. The fourth focus to planning process. And also another topic focus to the benefit. And the last, we discuss about the limitation and challenge in integrated land use system management and planning. For the first one, we focus to the concept of integrated land use system management and planning. At the definition shown in this slide, the integrated land use system management and planning like a multidisciplinary approach that coordinate the allocations, the regulations, development, and conservation of land resources. Because of we know that in the land resource, not only the land and the soil, we have another resources, right? We have forest, we have urban, we have agricultural land. So in management, we have to focus to all dimensions of land use. And the objective after we do integrated management, we want to achieve sustainable environment and economic and also social outcome. So this we call sustainability. And another concept is we have to connect the spatial or area or many type of land use. We have to do plannings. We have to do environmental management. We have to manage infrastructure development. And also we apply the governance into the unified decision-making framework. So when we decide to do the land use planning, we have to focus to the land area because of each land is have different component, different structure. So for a good management or best management practice, we have to know about the land resources. We have to know about the activity that we decide. Like we want to do the agricultural practice. So we have to know the information about how to make the productivity in too much product. So we have to design the infrastructure to support this activity. Like we design the irrigation canal, we design the road that easily to transport the productivity to the market. So we have to connect each component together. This is the first concept. And the topic that I set up to this course, you can see that you study in many aspects, like you know the perspective about land use, especially for the future trend, because now we know that we have many concern issue, like in many countries. Now we face the situation of aging society. Aging society means we have too old people. We have a lot of old people living in many countries. So for if we have too much old people, it is difficult to manage in many ways. So this is one of the future trend. Another situation that we face now, we know the what we call like a conflict between some country, and as we get the as we if we face the situation now. So this is cause effect to land use activity. So the future trend is very important to manage to do the land use planning. And another topic that I set in this course focus to the land use ecosystem based information. The lecturer comes and discuss about the ecosystem service we gain from we do land use planning. We know the diversity of the land resources, and also we know the concept of sustainability. So this concept can be used to support land use planning. And the third topic, this is the important topic because of when the land use change, land use, land cover change, it's cause many effects, like land use change cause effect to climate. At Dr. Sun from Vietnam, he give the information from the watershed area in his own country, in his home country. He said that when the climate change is cause effect to land use, it's cause effect to hydrology, and also it's cause effect to the degradation of the land area. And also Dr. Parishat, she give you information about agricultural product. When land use, land cover change, agricultural product productivity can be changed. Also, maybe it have it decreased. It's decreased because of the land use practice is not suitable like this. So many lecturers give the information to you. And another point, we focus to the tool when we use to do land use planning. Like we have technology we call 3S, GPS, GIS, and also RS. We use this technique to know the change, the situation of land use change in many countries, in many areas. And another important tool that the lecturer give to you is to use economic tool, because now economic is very important. If we know that we use too much money, we use too much budget to support, to manage the land, it can give too much money or not. So we can use economic theory to apply for this. And also the social and social side and is also important. Also, we have to know the information. We have to know the property of the soil. We have to know the attitude of the people, the awareness of the people. If if we know about this information, we can apply, we can select, or we can choose appropriate way to manage the land. And also the last topic that I mentioned to you, that the land use planning concept. Many organizations, they set the plan about land use planning, but the what we call like the pattern or the platform that they do is the same. The first topic that we have to know about the information of the land area, and then they try to set the objective, why we have to do land use planning, why they want to change land use, something like that. And also after we get the information like this, then we set up, we find out the problem, and then we set up the way to do manage that problem. So many way, many options we can set up, and then we select the appropriate way to apply. And after apply, we have to check, we have to monitor that plan is okay or not. So this is the concept of land use planning that I mentioned to you. So this slide show the core principle on land use planning. This focus to 5 main point, 5 main topic. The first principle is sustainability. In sustainability principle, we focus to environment. So we have to do protect the environment. That means the land use change can cause effect. So we have to manage in a good way. And next, for sustainability, we focus to the economic. The like I mentioned, if we use too much budget, it's okay or not for to manage like this way, something like that. And also the last of sustainability is social equity. So all the people get the benefit after do land use planning. This is the first principle. The second, we have to do integration or integrated. We have to do like we set up some activity, another activity can do after this. We call the horizontal integration. And also we can do some activity copying or align with some activity. If two activities do together, it can cause another activity like this. This is the vertical integration. This is the second principle. The third, we focus to the spatial efficiency or area-based management. In each area, we have different soil property, we have different natural resources. So we have to do manage in different way. And another principle, we focus to the participation and governance. Of course, the people who live in the area, they need too much product. They need too much productivity. So if they know that if they want to get more productivity, what activity they have to decide. Anyway, if they want to meet the sustainable, they have to participate to another user who use that area. So the participation is very important now in many countries. If people they know or they have awareness about land use or natural resource degradation, so they can support in management. And also the policy from the government, the regulation and the law that support the management is also important. And the last principle we call the resilience and adaptation, because nowadays we have many significant issue or concern issue. So the resilience and adaptation can decide to the plan, to the area, because it's very some problem or some issue is really hard to do manage. So we have to adapt to another way to solve that problem. So this is all the principle we use in land use planning. And these are some theoretical that support in land use planning. The first theory that Dr. Yongyut give you some information, we have to focus to the systematic theory. in land use, we have not only ecological system, we also have socio and economic system live together in the systematic. For systematic theory, we know that we comprise two main points in system in the system. The first point we focus to the structure of the system. So for land use, for land resources, we have many structure. That means we have many natural resources. And the second, we focus to the function and service from the system. Like forest can can protect the problem of soil erosion because of the canopy of the forest reduce the energy from the rainfall. So when the energy is reduced, when the energy is reduced, it cause not too much effect to the soil. So the problem of soil erosion is reduced also. And another point, the soil in the forest land, this soil can absorb more water. So this show the linkage or relationship among natural resource in the system. So this is one of the first theory. The second theory, of course, now we focus to the sustainable development that focus to both natural resources, focus to social and economic. So the term SDG that we know is the is one of the theory we use in land use planning. The landscape ecology, because of in the area, the ecology or the landscape is different. So we have to check, we have to know the information about the landscape and decide the plan or decide the activity that suitable in that area. It's called benefit. If we do in a good way, we get more benefit when we use the land. And another point, another theory, when we want to develop, to decide the activity to develop the land area, like we have to do like a mixed use and planning in the city, in the urban area. We have to decide the smart growth and compact, or we decide the green infrastructure to support. So in this area, because of there are a lot of land utilization pattern, so we have to mix in a good way. So this is the theoretical support, and these are the key components when we do land use planning. These are the key components. The first component, we focus to the land resource assessment. Like we know the land capability and we know the land suitability. We have to do analyze the land capability. Of course, we focus to the soil property. If the soil have a good structure, have a high fertility, it can be used in many ways. It can use for agriculture, it can use for urban, it can use for industry. But if we focus to land suitability, not only soil property, we focus to economic, and also we focus to social. If we do too much, if we use too much budget, but we get a few benefit, it's unsuitable, right? So for the land suitability, we have to focus not only soil property, we focus to economic and also social. That means the people, they agree or they understand why they want to use why they use the land resource like this, or why they want to use the land resource to be some activity like this. So we have to analyze to this important information, and we know we can identify the land resource condition. like this. So the analysis of land capability and suitability is the first step in land resource assessment. And another we focus to another natural resources and ecosystem. We can evaluate that what are the benefit we gain from another structure, like what are the benefit we gain from the forest land, what are the benefit when we gain from the water resource from the land area. So we have to evaluate this important productivity from the resources. And the second component, we focus to the spatial planning instrument. Of course, the first thing for management, for land use planning, we have to do zoning first. But for do zoning, they have to set the regulation why this area have to be zoning. Like for example, as I mentioned about forest land zoning, forest zoning in Thailand, because of in its forest type, in its forest pattern, we have different management criteria. Like for this belong to the conservation area. We have to do protect. But if we set the land area to the economic forest, this area can be used to do reforest, to do plantation, or can use in another way. So the first thing we have to set up the regulation why we have to separate the land area. For example, in Thailand, we have the what we call land use planning systematic. We call watershed classification. The watershed classification means we divide the land area depend on its hydrological characteristic. It depends on the what we call the problem from the land area. So in the watershed class 1, we said that this area like forest land, the mountainous area. So for this area, we have to do protect. So after we set the condition or the criteria like this, we have to do zoning after that. And then the second step that we have to do land use zoning map. As I mentioned, we have to get the map. We know which area belong to, this area belong to the forest land, it belong to the government that do protect, that do some activity. This area divide into the agricultural land. So many company, many institutional do their activity in this land. So we know which land located where. This land like agriculture, why we found the agricultural land on the mountainous area like this. So after we do zoning, we know this is good or not for each land use type. And then we know the development boundary, like we know the pattern of land use. We know this area like urban. So for urban land, we have to do manage in many ways. But for forest land, as I mentioned, if they set to the protected or conservation forest, no activity allowed. No activity allowed to do in this area. We have to do only protect. We have to do only design for tourists like this. So for this is for conservation forest. But if the forest become degraded, we found the problem that the people go to the forest, cut down the tree, do agriculture, something like that. So the forest become degraded. In this area, the degraded forest, we have to do reforestation, we have to do protection, and also we can change to another land use type. If we found that in this area, the soil have a good property, like have too much have fertility soil like that. So we can change from forest to agriculture. So when we divide into many type of land use, we can set up appropriate technology or appropriate way to use the land area. And also the last in spatial planning, we have to set the plan, the master plan, the big plan set for a long time, maybe for more than 5 years. We call the master plan. And also we set the action plan. The action plan means we have to do, we know that which area that's caused the problem, which are the way we can use to manage that land area, who do responsibility for manage that land area, how much budget we have to use. So the action plan means we have to set this plan for to manage the land. Okay, so this is the key, the first two key component. The third component, we focus to the policy, especially now the problem of land use, resources management in many countries. They focus to the land tenure or land right, because of in some area the people have no land right, so it is difficult to them to do manage the land. Then the policy was set up, like in Thailand, for example. Now we try to give the people the land rights, to give to them. But after give the land rights to them, before give the land right, we have to check first that area they get in what we call like prohibit or illegal or not. We have to check first. If illegal, that land should belong to the government, and then the government they do the protection activity. So before we give the land right to the landowner, we have to check first. And also we have the policies focus to the environmental regulation, because of, as I mentioned, we not only focus to the soil or the land, we focus to the water, to the forest, to the wildlife that use or live in the land. So the environmental regulation is one of the tool that we use. And also we have to set up the mechanism to control the development, because of like, for example, if we decide to use the highland area for some activity, like, for example, they want to design a dam, big dam in the forest. It's illegal. It's not illegal, but we call it inappropriate to do that activity, because of if we design or we construct a big dam, it cause effect to the forest land. So after set up this activity, we have to do the EIA process, environmental impact assessment process. If we found that the impact is not too much, it's not too high impact, so we can use anyway, even it's caused a few problem, a few impact, we still to set up the what we call like to monitoring and evaluation plan also, because of after we finish the EIA process and then they start construction, maybe some problem cause show effect after that. So we have to check clearly before we do that. And also the last component, the last key component, we have to apply the decision support tool, like a technology, for example, 3S, GPS, RSGS, we can use to know the information about the land area. We use the technique of MCDA to decide that why we use the land for this activity. So we have to set up the criteria, and then we know that this area maybe important for this activity, for the first rank, for the second rank to another activity like this. So the MCDA is important to decide which is the appropriate activity for each land use. And also we use the MIS, Management Information System. Also we use to know that why we use the area like this. The management information is also important to support the activity. And also the scenario modeling, because we face many situations now. So if we know that we can predict to the in the future for 10 or 20 years, and we know that if the land use change like this, the effect of climate change can occur in another way, something like that. So we can set up the scenario and do the modeling. Like for example, for my research, I do my research about the land use change and the effect to the hydrological in the area in the northeastern part of Thailand. We know that in the present situation of land use, the water become too low. The water become too low. So I assign by setting up the scenario that if we have more forest land, I design in the JS technique, add more forest land to this area. The research found that when we have more forest land, the water become higher, especially in the dry season. Normally in dry season in northeastern part of Thailand, we have no more water. But when I do the scenario modeling to add more forest land to the area, we found that the water become higher. And also we found that in dry season, we have the water in the river. So this is the scenario. So we can do like this. Maybe anyway, the scenario we have to check later, because of scenario may be changed, may be different every time. So we have to check after we decide or we do this. We have to check that we set scenario until that time is face that problem or not. So we have to check. So these are the many the key components. And also this is the planning process framework. As I mentioned, we have many steps in land use planning, but the similar information that we have to find the problem, we have to identify the problem we found in that land area. We know the problem of soil erosion, something like that. So we have to set up the plan to control or to reduce the effect of soil erosion. So we call this like we find out the challenge from the land area. And then we have to do data collections. We have to do that. We have to prove that the problem of soil erosion is really severe or not. If we found that it's really severity, so we have to set up the plan to control this. And then we have to discuss or consult with the people. We have many stakeholders in to use the land. So if they found that the problem of, for example, the soil erosion is very severity to them, so they have to support or they have to follow the methodology that was set up later. So we have to discuss with the stakeholder, and then we have to set up the option like a plan or a scenario that we decide. So we have many options to solve the problem. Many options to control the problem. After we set up many options, we have to select the best option and apply. But before we we select the option, we have to check some policy or the law that can support that option or not. If the policy support that option, it can be designed, it can be generate, or it can be implement the plan. And after implement, we have to set up some mechanism to drive the plan, because of if we only set up, we ask the local government, local agency to do. If they have no mechanism, maybe the plan is not successful, like this. And also the last step, we have to do monitoring and evaluation. That means we want to know that that plan is okay for that area or not. We want to know that what effect after we decide or we generate that plan to the area. So we have to do monitoring. If the plan is okay, we can continue. But if the plan is not unsuccessful, we have to change to another option. So this is the concept. This is the framework of land use planning. Like this, as I mentioned, for the process in each step, we have many input to input to each step, and from each step we found output, and this output it can support another step like this. So for this picture I mentioned already, and also like this, you can see that the step of land use planning is the same. So we have to set up, we have to do the we have to collect the data, we have to set up the objective, we have to assess the situation of the land resources, and then we have to participate with the people. After that, we have to set the plan, set the option, and decide or choose the option, the best option, and do implement. After implement, we have to check, we have to evaluate and monitor. And after we evaluate and monitor, we have to decide the new way, the new method to solve the problem. Or if we check that if the plan is okay, we can continue doing that plan. And after that, we have to check, because of the plan is suitable for some period, some time, not for a long time. So this is the step. And also I want to show that this is the contemporary challenge about land use, about land management. The first challenge, we focus to the urbanization. Even now in the urban land area or remote area, the land use change, what we call change rapidly. Like in the community, in the remote land, the people, they expand because of they have what we call a lot of people live there. And then after, if they want more productivity, they have to expand the agricultural land area. So this is the challenge, the first challenge. And also in agricultural land is convert to another type. Like some area, we face the problem of flooding every year. We face the problem of drought every year. So the pattern of agricultural was changed. Like that area, for example, the area always face the problem of flooding. So the farmer, they change from paddy to the upland crop because of every year we face the problem, we lose budget, we lose property for this area. So if they change to another land, to the cropland area, by they put the soil, they make like what we call like a what we call like agricultural some agricultural practice, so they can get more budget from when they change from paddy to upland or to vegetation like this, for example. And also the important challenge we face now, the problem of climate change, that we know, and all lecturers they give you the information what the effect of climate change to natural resources, and also the problem of land tenure, the problem of land light. We call the land tenure, land light insecurity. That I mentioned that if the people they have no land light, it's difficult to them to use that land because of for manage the land we have to use or spend many budget. If they have no land light, maybe it cause insecurity to them that they maybe someday sometime the government the officer come and then put them to the jail, something like that. So if we got the land light, they can do in many ways in that land area. And also the next challenge, we focus to the misuse of the land. For example, we found the community certain located on the highland area. We found a factory or industry located in the city like this. So we call this the misuse of the land used in inappropriate way. So this is another challenge. And also for the development, we set up some infrastructure, but it showed what we call like a mismatch to the land use. For example, we set up the some structure to the land, but it cannot support the land activity, the land use activity like this. And also the last challenge, the policy gap. Okay, because of the policy, maybe they design for the whole, for the what we call like holistic for the whole area like this. For in some part, in small area, maybe this policy cannot be applied like this. So this is another challenge that we try to use to support the land use planning. And after we do land use planning, integrate to integration land use system management and planning, it can be reduce the land use conflict. As I mentioned, we have many conflict between land use because of we have many user, we have many activity. So if we do like a land use planning, we can reduce this problem. And also we can enhance environmental conservation because of if we do follow the land use planning, this area choose that we zoning the land area. We know that this area should be conserved. This area can be used. So when we protect the land area for conservation, the environment become in a good condition. And also another benefit, the infrastructure, it can be improved in efficiency way. That means we match between the infrastructure and the land resources. So it can cause efficiency in management. And another benefit we call web security. Web means water, energy, and food security. So after we use land use planning, we can get a benefit from food. We get more food, we get more water, we get more energy from the resources. And the last benefit we can promote in social dimension. We can promote equitable urban and rural development like this. So this is all the benefit we gain. And anyway, we still found the limitation when we try to use the concept of integration land use planning. because of we still have the institutional fragmentation. Like for Thailand, for one resources, for one resource, we have many company, we have many organization to do protect, to do responsibility to that resources. Like for water, we have many agency, we have many organization, like irrigation department, like water resource department to do responsibility for these resources. So this means we have to set another organization to do manage the resort in resort. And also the second, we focus to the policy. Some policy cause the problem to the land resources. For example, as I mentioned, in Thailand, we decide to give the people the land life. Anyway, we have limitation land area. We have limitation land area, but the need for land occupied is too high. The government says we have to give the land right to the people, but in the real world, we know more land area. So if they want to give land right to the people, which area they can give to the people? Forest land. So they ask the forest department to give the degraded forest land to them, and then they decide to separate the land, to zoning the land, and give the land right to the people. So that means we face the conflict between land management among the government and the policy maker. We have the what we call like a conflict between these two groups, and these two groups is in the high level, so they can make a decision like this. So this is the limitation. And also another limitation focus to the data. We have no more data about land resources. In some area, like in Thailand, forest land, we have no information about soil property in the forest land. We set this soil group, we call the slope complex land, slope complex soil, but we have no information about the property of the soil in the forest land. So we still have limitation about the data in many data. And also the conflict, as I mentioned, especially we have many stakeholders. So the conflict can occur in every aspect. And another limitation we call the implementation gap between before doing some activity, before setting up the plan. We have to set that this plan, who will finish this plan, which budget we have to apply, and which way we can get this budget. So we call this is the gap when we try to do implementation. So this is all the limitation we found when we do. And this is some model for integration land use system management and planning. These are some model. You can find this model in many countries. Like the first model we use, we call the mixed use zoning. In mixed use zoning mean we can combine many land activity together in the land area for specific tasks. Like for example, in the community, in the urban area, we found agricultural land, we found industrial land, we found the urban land stay together. But we can use and we can link all activity by what we call LiDAR infrastructure. Or another model, we can use the intermodal connectivity. to make the network of movement. Like we have the agricultural land. So if we want to transport the productivity to the market, we have to set up, we have to construct the load, build the load, make the load, and then we can carry out the productivity from the agricultural land to the market, to the city. So from mixed use zoning to intermodal connectivity, and some area we call the green infrastructure. For example, in the city, in the big city, we know that in the big city, they have a problem, many problems. For example, when the rain come to the big city, because of the surface covered by concrete, covered by another constructional structure. So the water cannot go deeply or cannot drain, well drain. So it's caused the problem of flooding. Then we have to design the green infrastructure. For example, we set up the green area or forest land or community forest or urban forest to support to solve this problem, because of in the urban forest, the soil in that forest can absorb more water. So this is, for example, this like the green infrastructure, but this focus to the vegetation, focus to the tree. And also another model, we focus to the policy, like we use the economic incentive. For example, for our country, we face the problem of people, they leave the land, and then we found weed or some species cover in the land. So that means they did not use that land to in a good way or to support their need, something like that. So the government said if they do not use that land, they have to fine, because of we for the land use we have to apply, or we have to do some activity, and then we got the benefit from that land. If they do not have some activity, they cannot get the product. So they said that if they not do in that land, they have to fine in a high rate. So we use the economic regulation to solve the problem. Or in some area, if they plan follow the rule that they set up, they will gain more money, or the tax that they have to pay is reduced, something like that. So we call the economic incentive. So this is some the model we use in integrated land use planning. So for the last of the slide, this is like the summarization or summary that the integrated land use system management and planning. We know that this is the strategic system-based and participatory framework essential for sustainable development. This is the concept. And another point of land use management and planning is required understanding about the land resources, not only focus to the physical property, but focus to another complex socio and ecological system, includes of institutional, economic, and also environmental network. So this is the summarization of the ILUSMP, Integrated Land Use System Management and Planning, like this. So I think this is all all the information from all lecturer that give information to all of you. So I think it's maybe it's okay. And also this is the last for assess your to check for your understanding about this course. Anyway, I found that some of you send submit the report for some report to me. I download already. Anyway, for all of you, I will explain again. The first assignment for for some of you submit already. I need the report about the information on this, on the land resort challenge in your home country. Like this. So make a report, a brief report, not to give too much information, but I want to know that the situation of land resource in your country, what are the situation, what are the issue, what are the challenge, and how to manage. So you have to show the information, you have to show the supporting data, and also you have to give some solution, a brief solution. This is for the mid-semester assessment. This is the first work assigned, and the second work assigned that to know about the land use planning in your home country. What are the land use planning? You can give some information about land use planning in forest land, in urban land, or agricultural land. It depends on your understanding. It depends on your interesting. So this is I use to assess for the final assessment. And the last, this is the last, like the examination. This is the question I want to know from all of you. You have to answer this question for and I to assess your information, your understanding about the course from this question. So these are 3 works for you to assess both for midterm, for final examination, and the last assessment for of you. So this I set the time because you asked that with time you have to submit this report to our staff. So I set the time to the next Friday, 20 of March. You have to submit the data, submit the report to the staff, to Jane, or to I myself before 4 p.m. Thailand time on Friday 20. So this is the deadline, the date for submission. And also, okay, for the last, I think I appreciate for all of you that you attend the class until this time, until the end of the course. And I hope you that you can get some information from this course. I think it's more important if we have the field work. Because of land use planning, we have to go to the field, and then we have to do manage in some area. It can make you clear and more understanding about the process. Anyway, because of we study in short time, it cannot do that I assign. And also for some topic that I try to manage for the course, some of you may think that it's not cover all of the topic that you want to know. It's not cover all. You can ask me more information if you need more detail, or maybe it can be good for all of you that you decide to study in higher level, right? For all of you, some of you decide to study. This is a good way, this is a good opportunity that you have to know some information first, and then when you go to study, you can go in deep detail about this information, especially the information about land use management. And okay, I know the last, I know the problem that our course, the time was set up during your work time, your working time. Maybe it's difficult to you that to join the class. Anyway, after finish this course for some students to join, we have some clip, we have some video, and we have some document that we have to submit to you later. So lastly, I would like to say thank you for you all to participate until the end of the course, and hope you to enjoy your day and enjoy your work. Okay, so thank you too much. And any more information, as I mentioned, you can email to I myself or to the staff to get more detail. Okay, so I would like to stop the class and hope you enjoy. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, thank you.